Asterisco the Dark Lords of Benin, a tale of power, blood, and legacy.
They don't die. They multiply. The whisper slipped through the wind like a curse, rustling the red earth beneath ancient feet and brushing past the cracked walls of Oba's forgotten shrine. It came not from a voice, but from memory, spoken in fear, in awe, and in warning. Long before the world mapped itself into nations and carved its borders into lines of politics and greed, there stood a kingdom of gold and fire, Benin. Hidden behind thick groves and moats carved by hands now turned to dust, this kingdom was more than just a civilization. It was a force, a beast with many heads, cloaked in mystery, guarded by warriors who drank thunder and walked with the wrath of gods. And at the canter, coiled like a serpent in silence, sat its dark lords. They were not demons in the way the West would later paint them, nor were they simply kings, bound by the limits of throne and court. No, the lords of Benin were something in between, half men, half myths, drenched in the power of tradition, oaths, and ancestral pacts too sacred to name. James Brooke, a journalist once embedded deep in the political jungles of West Africa, coined the phrase, the Dark Lords of Benin, not in satire, but in awe. In 1994, writing for the New York Times, he ventured into the heart of what most dared not speak of, the strange endurance of power, legacy, and fear that ruled the minds and muscles of Nigeria's Edo people. But what Brooke scratched was barely the surface. What lies beneath is far darker and far more human.
Whispers in bronze.
In the heat-drenched city of Benin, the sun doesn't simply shine, it pierces. It cuts through market stalls, into the cracked skins of aged traders, through the windows of rusting buses, and even deeper, into memory.
The people remember.
They remember when the bronze castings, lifelike and unflinching, weren't just tourist curiosities but messages. Symbols. Codes for those who understood the language of power. The Benin bronzes, those stunning works looted by the British in 1897 during their infamous punitive expedition, were not merely decorative. They were documents. In copper and alloy, they told the story of the kingdom, its victories, betrayals, gods, and most of all, its lords. Each face molded in metal bore a story of blood. Each warrior cast with exaggerated eyes and rigid posture was both a guardian and a reminder. These were not hollow artifacts, they were witnesses. Bloodlines and Oaths. It is said that a true Oba, Benin's monarch, is not crowned by men, but by spirits. This belief, whispered still in the back rooms of Benin's courtyards, threads through the very veins of the kingdom. From Yuka I, who in the 12th century was crowned with a legacy of his Ife ancestry, to the recent Obas who sit beneath leopard skin canopies and mutter blessings in Edo tongue, the bloodline has been kept alive not by politics but by rituals.
Rituals of fire, of death,
of secrecy. In one harrowing ceremony known as the Ikwo, families of certain nobles must offer sacrifices, sometimes animals, sometimes wealth, sometimes something darker, to maintain the balance of spiritual power. If the spirits are not fed, misfortune follows. Crops fail.
Children die. Gifts fall ill.
And so, the lords of Benin remain fed.
James Brooke Segase.
When James Brooke arrived in Benin, he didn't come with guns or flags. He came with questions. But answers in this city were dangerous things. He spoke with taxi drivers who wouldn't drive near the royal palace at night. He met old men who chewed kola nut and turned their eyes away when asked about the Oba's power. He watched, notebook trembling in his hand, as a young man was publicly whipped for insulting a chief, by law, by tradition, and by the people's demand. What he saw was not dictatorship. It was devotion. What Brooke uncovered was a system that had survived colonization, civil war, democracy, and modernity, not by accident, but by design. The Dark Lords had not vanished. They had adapted.
The Kingdom Bain de Curtain.
Modern-day Benin city bustles with okadas, motorcycle taxis, Afrobeat rhythms, phone repair shops, and social media influencers. But step beyond the paved roads and Instagram feeds, and you'll find the kingdom still breathing. In every coronation, there is still the blood of a goat spilled. In every naming ceremony, the ancestors are still called. The Oba's palace, hidden behind layers of compound walls, is still a mystery to most locals. Few enter. Fewer speak of what they see. One rumor claims that beneath the palace lies a network of tunnels, built centuries ago, connecting shrines to sacrifice chambers, chambers to sacred groves, groves to the underworld itself. A former palace guard, who requested anonymity, once whispered, "We are taught never to ask why a room is locked. If the Oba has not opened it, it is not your place to wonder."
The Dark Lords today.
In 2020, Oba Uware II spoke against human trafficking and ritual killings. But his very words echoed with irony, because the same structures that enforced divine order in ancient Benin were now being weaponized by criminals exploiting superstition. And yet, the Oba stood firm. In a world spiraling into digital chaos, he remained a figure of spiritual calm. His white robes, his beaded crown, his silent authority, it reminded his people of something bigger than votes and bills. It reminded them of a covenant. Not all dark is evil. Not all lords are cruel. But all power must be watched. Of masks and mirrors. To understand the Dark Lords of Benin, one must learn the difference between fear and reverence. Fear is what keeps the weak in line.
Reverence is what keeps the world from falling apart.
Benin is not ruled by terror, but by stories. Stories that keep children from walking into forests alone. Stories that teach young men not to raise hands against elders. Stories told through dances, through scars, through whispers after nightfall. And in every story, the lords live on. Who dares walk past Eigen Street without bowing his head?
An old woman is said once.
Her eyes burned. Do you not know whose spirits walk here?
Lessons from the dust.
The West often asks, why don't they move on? Move on from tradition, from monarchy, from rituals and spirits and dark lords. But what the West fails to see is this. Benin has not stood still. It has survived. It has morphed from empire to colony to city to kingdom in a nation. And at every turn, it has kept its identity, not in defiance of change, but in harmony with it. Yes, the lords are dark. But so is the soil from which trees grow. Yes, they rule from shadow. But so does the heart within the chest.
When the dust settles.
When James Brooke left Benin, he wrote, "They walk in the shadow of a crown that never fell." Indeed, it didn't. And it won't. Because the Dark Lords of Benin do not sit on thrones alone. They sit in memory, in bronze,
In blood.
in story. And as long as the people remember, they will rise again. Not in violence, not in war, but in the slow, steady beat of the drum.
And the whisper.
They don't die, they multiply.
Trattino, trattino.
Like what you just experienced.
If the whispers of power, legacy, and ancient empires stir the summiting deep within you, don't let the story end here.
Subscribe to Curiousphere, where every episode dives beyond the surface, unearthing forgotten kingdoms, hidden truths, and mysteries that shape our modern world.
Hit the bell icon so you're first to know when history breathes again.
Like, comment, and share, because stories like these deserve to live on.
This is Curiousphere, where curiosity rules, and the truth is never afraid of the dark.